Ever had life knock the wind out of you, just when you thought everything was finally falling into place? What if I told you that your most painful struggle could be the beginning of your greatest strength? And what if the key wasn't in avoiding hardship, but in learning how to turn it into fuel? Let's be real, there's no version of life that comes without struggle. You can do everything right, make the perfect plan, train with full focus, stick to the discipline, and still, everything can fall apart. Sometimes, the job you were counting on vanishes overnight. Sometimes, the person you trusted the most walks out without a word. Sometimes, the foundation you built your entire future upon crumbles, without so much as a warning, and in that instant, everything that once felt secure now feels impossible. The world feels colder, smaller, crueler, and you're left asking, what now? But here's where everything shifts. That moment, as brutal and gut-wrenching as it is, carries with it a question. Will this moment define you? Or will it refine you? That's the invisible line, the one that separates those who stay stuck from those who rise. The Stoics knew this deeply. They didn't sit around hoping hardship would pass them by. They expected it, prepared for it. They didn't just aim to survive the fall, they trained themselves to grow through it. And if you're here, if you're searching for clarity, strength, resilience, and personal power, you're not alone. You're in the right place. Because this isn't about positive thinking. It's about powerful thinking. It's about learning how to use the pain, not to break you, but to sharpen you. So let's talk about how to turn your setbacks into a source of transformation, into something unshakable, into something stronger than before. Because here's the truth, when everything starts falling apart, most people don't reach for courage. They reach for comfort. And not the kind that heals. The kind that hides. They numb the pain with distractions. They pick fights that don't matter. They run from the mirror, when what they really need is to face it. But you can choose something different. And that's exactly what we'll explore, starting right now. When everything starts to fall apart, as we mentioned before, most people don't reach for courage. They reach for comfort. But not the kind that heals. The kind that hides. And hiding? It might feel safe. It might feel easy. But is it really getting you anywhere? Here's the hard truth. Avoidance doesn't save you. It traps you. The longer you keep running from the wreckage, the deeper you stay buried in it. We convince ourselves we're just too busy to deal with the pain. We distract ourselves with noise, with drama that doesn't matter, with battles that don't build us, but keep our souls frozen. And it gets worse. We pretend we're fine because admitting we're not feels like defeat. We'd rather point fingers at someone else than hold up the mirror. But pain doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. It waits, quietly, until it grows into something even harder to face. The Stoics had a name for this illusion of protection, apatheia, a state of inner calm. Not from ignoring pain, but from understanding it. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you that matters. It's how you react to it." And that reaction, the first true step forward, starts with truth. Not the version you tell others to save face. Not the sugar-coated story you whisper to yourself to avoid shame. But the truth. Raw. Unfiltered. Honest. The truth that stings a little because it finally hits where it matters. So stop hiding behind the noise. Sit down. Get quiet. You don't have to fix everything today, but you do have to see it. Ask yourself, what actually happened? Not how it made you feel, but what truly occurred. Did you ignore your gut when it warned you? Did you stay in something you knew you should have walked away from? Did you hope it would magically fix itself, when deep down you knew it wouldn't? The answers might hurt. But that sting? That's your starting line. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." So think about it. Every setback you've refused to face, every truth you've buried, they don't disappear. They become shadows. They follow you from one chapter to the next. You'll call it bad luck. You'll say it's someone else's fault. But deep down, It was just a truth you never owned. And this isn't about guilt. This is about power. The power to finally reclaim your story by no longer running from the pain that shaped it. And in the next section, we'll explore exactly how to rebuild from that place, not by pretending to be strong, but by becoming unshakable from within. In the last section, we talked about the power of facing truth, real truth, without excuses or filters. Now let's take that one step further. Because clarity isn't the end of the road. It's the beginning. This isn't about punishing yourself or dragging old wounds back into the light just to feel the pain again. No. It's about something much deeper, control. It's about refusing to let the same patterns write the next chapter of your life without your permission. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." That wasn't just philosophy, it was instruction. If you never pause to reflect, if you never dissect what truly went wrong, then guess what? You're not healing, you're looping. Different day, same pain, just wearing a different disguise. That's where strength shows up, not in pretending you're fine, but in writing it all down. Raw. Honest. Without filters. No edits to make it prettier. Just truth. Plain and sharp. This is what I did. This is what I missed. This is what I tolerated. This is what I avoided. You don't write it to stay in the past. You write it to finally leave it behind. Because something happens when your pen hits the page. It's subtle at first, but then, the fog starts to lift. The chaos quiets. The emotion softens its grip. And suddenly, you're no longer just someone who got knocked down. You're someone who's learning how to stand back up, wiser, steadier, stronger. Plato said, "Truth is the beginning of every good thing." So let this be your beginning. You don't need perfect clarity today. You don't have to solve every problem overnight. But what you can't do is keep pretending. Because clarity isn't something the world hands you, it's something you carve for yourself. One honest word at a time. And now we come to one of the quietest, most dangerous traps people fall into after everything falls apart. It doesn't show up like an explosion. It doesn't come with sirens or red flags. It slips in silently, whispering, "This is who you are now." One mistake, one failure, one collapse. And suddenly, it rewrites your entire identity. You stop saying "I failed" and start believing "I am a failure." And that shift, that's dangerous. Because the moment you accept that lie, you start living down to it. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." And in the next section, we're going to talk about exactly that, how to shift your identity back into your hands by choosing your actions, your habits, and your truth. One step at a time. We just uncovered the dangerous lie that failure can quietly tattoo onto your identity, that what you did is who you are. But here's the truth the Stoics knew deeply: your past doesn't own you unless you give it permission. Let's go deeper. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Aristotle's words still echo today. Because just like excellence, failure can become a habit too, if you let it. If you keep replaying the same story in your mind, "I messed up. I'm not good enough. Maybe that's all I am," then soon enough, you start showing up like it's true. You start believing that the missed opportunity, the heartbreak, the rejection, those moments, they're not just events. They become a lens. And the longer you wear that lens, the harder it is to see anything else. It weighs on you. Quietly, but heavily. But here's where the Stoics were clear: you are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to do with it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every single day, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You can't always control the storm, but you can always control the meaning you give it. And that meaning? It shapes everything. Think about it for a moment. You didn't lose your worth because someone walked away. You didn't become broken because a plan fell apart. You didn't stop being you because a door closed. You hit a wall, but that's what life does. It doesn't whisper, it tests. And when it does, it's not asking you if you're strong. It's asking you to show it, because your value, it was never in the result. It lives in your response. That job you lost. Maybe it taught you what you didn't even know you needed. That mistake. It didn't destroy you, it revealed a weak point. A gap. A flaw. And in that space, it handed you a blueprint to grow. But here's the most important part, none of it gets to define you, unless you hand over the pen. So stop surrendering your identity to past events. Stop letting a temporary failure tattoo a permanent name tag on your soul. Start asking better questions. Start asking the one that matters most right now. What would I do today if I no longer believed this setback defines me? Would you speak louder? Would you take the risk again? Would you walk into the room, shoulders back, head high, like someone who's finally free? Because the moment you stop identifying with what went wrong, is the moment everything starts to go right. And just as Socrates once said, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And in the next section, we'll talk about exactly how to do that, how to stop looping the pain, and start designing your comeback. Are you ready to rise? You ready? So now that we've unhooked our identity from the past, there's only one question left. Who do you want to become? Because as Socrates once said, the way to gain a good reputation is to endeavor to be what you desire to appear. It's not about image. It's about integrity. It means showing up today as the person you aspire to be, not the one you were when everything fell apart. You don't have to wait for permission. You don't have to wait for proof. You don't even have to wait to feel ready. You start by acting, not from memory, but from belief. Because who you were during the fall is not who you're required to be during the rise. You are not your worst day. You're not the version of you who lost control, who gave up, who broke down. You are the builder who chooses to rise again. You are the architect who sketches a new foundation from the rubble. You are the student, still learning, still evolving, still showing up. And no one, not your past, not their judgment, not even your own fear, gets to rewrite the truth. Yes, you've been through something. But no, you are not over. You're not finished. And you are definitely not defined by the dust you were left in. You're defined by the rebuild. That rebuild begins the moment you stop confusing what you've been through with who you are. There's a line between the wound and the identity. Don't let one bleed into the other. And here's what happens next, something no one really talks about. When life hits you hard, it doesn't just knock you down emotionally. It hits you mentally. It shakes your vision. It rattles your why. That breathless kind of pain, the one that silences your fire, dims your purpose, and makes the path ahead look blurry. That's the moment when doubt creeps in and whispers, maybe this isn't worth it anymore. And when that voice grows louder than your reason, quitting doesn't just seem possible, it starts to feel reasonable. But stop right there. That's the trap. Because most people think motivation is the fuel. They wait for it like it's a gift that has to arrive before they move. But the Stoics, they knew better. Motivation doesn't come first. Action does. Action is the ignition. Action is the wheel turning. Reason, your reason, is what keeps it spinning when motivation breaks down. That's the truth the Stoics handed down through centuries. You don't control what happens, but you always control how you frame it. And now, in the next part, we'll uncover how to reframe the chaos, how to move not from emotion, but from clarity, so your steps forward aren't reactive, they're deliberate. So how do we regain that fire when everything feels cold? We start right here, with the words of Marcus Aurelius: if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke. That's not just philosophy. That's strategy. Because when your perspective crumbles, your purpose doesn't just dim, it starts to disappear. Lose one, and the other quietly follows. So let's bring it back. Let's cut through the noise, the chaos, the exhaustion that's been clouding your mind. Let's strip it all away, until only truth is left. What made you start? Not the tasks, not the timeline, but the reason, that deeper reason, the one that existed before things got messy, before disappointment crept in and discouragement whispered lies. Was it your family? The look in their eyes when they believed in you? Was it that version of the future, the one you pictured when no one else was watching, where you didn't just survive? You built something that mattered? Or maybe, just maybe, it was the quiet voice inside you, the one that said, you were made for more. And for one beautiful moment, you believed it. Carl Jung once wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Let that sink in. That's not just an inspirational quote. It's a reminder that something in you has been trying to grow, trying to evolve, trying to be seen, your entire life. Every single step you've ever taken forward, no matter how small, no matter how shaky, was because a piece of you refused to settle for surface-level existence. And when setbacks strike, when life goes dark, it's so easy to forget that, because pain narrows your vision. But your why brings it all back into focus. It reminds you of what matters, of what's real, of what's yours. And now, here's where it gets personal. Because the next move isn't just about remembering your why. It's about reclaiming it. Are you ready to take that back so you've started to remember your why? Now ask yourself this. If the people you love most could see you right now, your children, your partner, your closest friend, or even the younger version of you, wide-eyed and full of hope, what would they need to see? Would they need to see someone who crumbled when life got heavy? Someone who folded at the first sign of resistance? Or would they need to see someone who stood back up, bruised, battered, maybe even crawling, but still rising? Because maybe this isn't even about them. Maybe this is about you. The part of you that remembers when you had no plan, no guarantees, nothing certain, but still dared to want more, still dared to hope, still dared to try. That version of you, they're still there, still watching from the shadows, still waiting for you to lead. And the real question is, are you showing them how to give up, or how to fight back? Are you teaching them how to stay down, or how to rise with grace, grit, and purpose? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people in your life will never hear your reasons. They'll never know the weight you carry. They'll never see the fear behind your eyes. But you will. And that reason? It doesn't have to be poetic. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be stronger than your fear, stronger than your frustration, stronger than your excuses. It has to matter more than the temptation to stay stuck, to play small, to coast through life avoiding pain but missing purpose. Plato once said, the first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. And that victory, it begins the moment you reconnect with your why. It's not an overnight win. It's a daily war, and your reason is the armor you wear into that battle. It's strange, isn't it? How the smallest words can carry the heaviest weight. How the way you describe your life, even in silence, even just in your head, can shape your future more than the events themselves. Because sometimes, it's not what happened that holds you back. It's the story you tell about it, the quiet, whispered version of events you've replayed so many times. You don't even question it anymore. So what story are you telling? And are you ready to rewrite it? Because in the next part, that's exactly where we're going. So now that we've asked the tough questions, dug into your why, peeled back the pain, there's one place we still need to go, your words. Because when no one else is listening, when it's just you and your thoughts, the story you tell yourself in that silence, it either becomes your cage, or your key. It either keeps you circling the same hurt, the same shame, the same doubts, or it cracks open a new door, a door that leads forward. Aristotle once said, speech is the representation of the experiences of the mind. He wasn't just talking about words. He was talking about creation. Your words don't just describe your life. They shape it. They sculpt it. Say I'm broken long enough, and suddenly, your decisions match the identity. You pull back. You doubt yourself. You live in a way that confirms the belief. Say I'm stuck. And your energy shrinks. Your options blur. And even when doors open, you hesitate. Not because the problem is bigger, but because the phrase you gave it made it feel heavier than it really is. The Stoics understood this with painful Beautiful clarity. Epictetus once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." What did he mean? He meant that the words we choose, the way we label our experiences, they create mental loops. If your vocabulary is soaked in fear, shame, or retreat, then your mindset will follow. Even if your circumstances are temporary, your language makes them feel permanent. But flip that. If your words are shaped around rebuilding, around clarity, even progress, even in the middle of chaos, then something shifts. You start thinking like someone who still believes there's something worth fighting for, something still ahead, something still possible. Seneca once wrote, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." Now pause on that. Every time you speak about your life, whether out loud or just in your mind, you're feeding something. Are you feeding your fear, or are you feeding your strength? It's subtle. It hides in the smallest phrases. I always mess things up. Nothing ever works out for me. This is just who I am. Say those long enough, and your mind builds a home there. Say them long enough, and eventually, you forget that you ever had the right to speak differently. But the shift, it doesn't have to be some dramatic speech. It doesn't start with shouting affirmations into a mirror. It starts small, quiet, almost invisible. Just one phrase changed, just one belief questioned, just one word replaced. So how do we begin rewriting the story? It starts with something simple, something powerful. It starts with replacing "I'm lost" with "I'm searching." Replacing "I failed" with "I learned." Not to lie to yourself, but to lead yourself. Because as Socrates once said, the greatest way to live with honor in this world is to be what we pretend to be. Let that sink in. Speak like the person you're becoming. Use words that stretch you forward, not the ones that keep tying you to a version of yourself you've already outgrown. That doesn't mean denying your past. It doesn't mean covering up the pain with fake positivity. It means narrating your experience from a place of power, not pity. You don't say, "I lost everything." You say, "I'm starting again, this time, with deeper wisdom." You don't say, "I'm broken." You say, "I'm healing." And every time you shift that language, you're sending a signal to your nervous system that movement is still possible, that identity is still evolving, that the story is still being written. Because here's a truth most people overlook. Language is strategy. It's one of the most underestimated, underused tools of personal recovery and transformation. Plato once said, "The beginning is the most important part of the work." But most beginnings, they don't start with action. They don't start with grand gestures. They start with a sentence. Just one sentence. One better sentence. Spoken consistently. Until your mindset starts to catch up. Until your habits begin to follow. Until your life begins to shift. And funny enough, when life knocks us flat, when we're curled up in the pit, what does our brain immediately reach for? The big fix, the reinvention, the bold leap. We think we have to blow it all up and start over, rebuild our entire identity overnight. But that's not how real change works. Not when you're barely breathing. Not when your strength is hanging by a thread. Not when the weight of disappointment is still pressing on your chest. No. When you're at your lowest. It's not the leap that saves you, it's the small step, the unglamorous, ordinary, quiet step forward, the one that doesn't make headlines, but builds foundations. The Stoics had no time for drama, no use for pity parties, no interest in wallowing. Marcus Aurelius wrote, and here's where we smoothly transition to the next quote and idea in the following section. Marcus Aurelius said something so profound, it's echoed across centuries. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He wasn't talking about scaling mountains in a single heroic leap. He was talking about movement, raw, determined, sometimes wobbly, right in the middle of resistance. He was talking about putting one foot in front of the other, especially when you feel like standing still, especially when your mind is foggy, your body tired, and motivation is nowhere in sight. That's the real secret most people miss. Action doesn't wait for motivation. It creates it. We tend to romanticize the big breakthrough, the movie moment, the flash of clarity. But what actually shifts your life, Tiny wins. You clean out one messy drawer, and suddenly your whole space feels lighter. You send one message you've been avoiding, and your shoulders drop 2 inches. You take just a 10-minute walk, and somehow, something in your brain clicks back into gear. It's not magic, it's momentum. And momentum doesn't come from waiting, it comes from repetition, from the basics, from showing up, from daily, deliberate effort that no one applauds, but your soul feels. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Let that sink in. You don't become strong by talking about change. You become strong by stacking small acts of integrity, by doing the thing, especially when no one's watching, especially when it's not glamorous, not impressive, not Instagram-worthy. Because in a world obsessed with grand gestures and dramatic comebacks, consistency is louder than any speech. The work is the proof. And yet, it's the part most people skip. They wait. Wait until they feel ready. Wait for clarity. Wait for a sign. Wait until the fog magically clears. But here's the truth. Readiness isn't something you find, it's something you build. One tiny action at a time, one checked box, one completed task. That's how your brain starts to trust you again. That's how your nervous system shifts from paralysis to motion, from doubt to momentum. So pause right now and ask yourself, what's one small win I can earn today? Not 10, not a life overhaul, just one. Can you drink a glass of water first thing in the morning? Can you drink a glass of water first thing in the morning? Can you respond to that one message you've been dodging for days? Can you silence your phone? Set it aside. And simply sit, breathe, for 5 undisturbed minutes. If the answer is yes, do it. If the answer is no, then scale it back. Choose something even smaller, even simpler. Because here's the truth, it's never about the size of the action. It's about the signal it sends, a message not to the world, but to yourself. I'm still in this. I haven't quit. I'm still building. Aristotle once said, we become just by performing just actions, temperate by performing temperate actions, brave by performing brave actions. In other words, your identity isn't something you passively hope into existence. It's earned, one choice at a time. You don't wait to feel like the person you want to become. You act like them, now. In the small moments, in the quiet repetitions. You don't rebuild your life by shouting into the void, hoping the universe hears you. You rebuild by doing the dishes when you said you would, by showing up to that workout when no one's watching, by finishing that project you promised yourself you'd start and finish. You let go of the idea that change has to be dramatic to count, because here's the part no one tells you. The real comeback doesn't start when the spotlight hits. It starts in silence, in the boring, unglamorous, uncelebrated minutes, where no one's clapping, and you show up anyway. You move forward, not perfectly, but honestly, and it's that movement, raw, real, consistent, that unlocks belief, and belief, that's what begins to rewrite everything. There's something people don't talk about enough when they talk about healing. Not the pain itself, not the heartbreak, not the breakdown, but the exhaustion, the deep, invisible kind. The kind that follows you into every room, even after the moment has passed. It's not just what happened that wears you down. It's the noise that follows it. The opinions, the explanations, the pressure to keep performing like nothing's changed. Like you didn't just survive something that could have broken you. You're walking through your day in survival mode, barely holding yourself together with threads, and somehow still trying to show up for your job, your family, your friends. But here's the hard truth that most people avoid. You can't rebuild your life if you keep leaking your energy in 100 different directions. The Stoics knew this well. They didn't sugarcoat it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. In today's language, you don't have to let everything in. You don't have to hand out pieces of yourself just because someone asks. When you're hurt, your mind is fragile, your emotions are raw, your energy is limited. So why spend it trying to explain your pain to people who only listen to respond, or worse, to judge? Let this be a reminder. You don't owe everyone access to your healing. Not every text needs a reply. Not every call deserves your time. And not every opinion requires your attention. Think about it this way. You wouldn't leave your front door wide open in the middle of a violent storm. Right? So why are you letting people wander in and out of your mental space, while you're still rebuilding the very foundation you stand on? Carl Jung once said, "The sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. That light, your light, doesn't burn brighter because you give it to everyone. It burns brighter because you protect it, because you focus it, because you guard what fuels it." This isn't about cutting everyone off. It's not about isolation. It's about intention. You're healing, you're rebuilding, and right now. That means choosing where your energy goes. And let's keep going, because the next step in healing is not about doing more. It's about doing less, but doing it with purpose. It's about curating your environment so it supports healing, not prolongs damage. It's about walking into your own life and asking the uncomfortable question: is this place helping me recover, or is it quietly keeping me stuck? Plato once said, "The part can never be well unless the whole is well." And that truth still hits hard today. So how do you take care of the whole? You start by protecting your peace, not passively, not someday, but intentionally, right now. You take an honest inventory of your life. What people drain you the second they appear? Who brings tension to your chest before they've even spoken a word? What thoughts pull you into an old loop you already outgrew, but still fall back into because it's familiar? What habits keep you in survival mode, even though your soul is asking for strength? These aren't easy questions, but they're necessary ones. Socrates warned, "Beware the barrenness of a busy life." And how relevant is that now? Because busyness isn't always productivity. Sometimes it's just avoidance in disguise. Filling your time with to-do lists, endless conversations, notifications, noise. So you don't have to face the stillness. But healing doesn't happen in chaos. It doesn't happen in the noise. It happens in quiet. It happens in boundaries. It happens when you finally decide that not everything, and not everyone, deserves access to your energy. This isn't selfishness. It's strategy. You're not cutting people off to be cold. You're cutting off chaos to make room for clarity. You're choosing to build, not out of reaction, but out of intention. And that means being ruthless about what you allow in your conversations, your media, your inner monologue. If it doesn't help you heal, if it doesn't support your recovery, then it doesn't belong in your atmosphere. Period. Some days, you'll wake up and feel it before your feet even hit the floor. That heavy silence in your chest. That voice that says, "Maybe not today." It will be so tempting to listen, to skip the routine, to break the promise, to hit pause on the very thing you need to keep going. But here's the truth, that moment, right there, is the line between those who rebuild and those who remain. It's called discipline. Let's keep going. Because this part, it's the quiet engine that turns rebuilding into transformation. The truth about growth is not what most people want to hear. It doesn't arrive in a flash of insight. It doesn't ride in on a wave of motivation. It comes through something far less glamorous: repetition, boring, unsexy, often thankless repetition. Growth is forged in the days that feel empty. The days when you wake up tired and uninspired. The days when the mirror looks the same, and the scoreboard hasn't moved an inch. Those nothing is changing days, they're not wasted. They're everything. Because the people who rise, they're not built different. They're built daily. They're not fueled by some rare, magical energy. They're fueled by consistency, by discipline, by quiet decisions that no one claps for. Discipline is a declaration. It's not a feeling. It's a statement. It's you saying, "I've decided who I'm becoming, and I'm acting like it now." Not when it's easy, not when it's convenient, not when the results are obvious. Right now. Because you don't wait for motivation. Motivation is a visitor. It drifts in, and it drifts out. But discipline? Discipline stays. It anchors you. It carries you when motivation disappears. And the Stoics, they understood this on a soul-deep level. They trained themselves not to depend on how they felt in the moment, but to attach themselves to something stronger: their values. their purpose, their principles. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And that mastery, it begins right here, with discipline. This is not about being perfect. It's not about crushing every day or never missing a beat. It's about something far more powerful. Holding the line. Because the version of you you're building, it doesn't need you to be flawless. It just needs you to be faithful. Faithful to the process. Faithful to the quiet work. Faithful to the part of you that keeps showing up, even when no one notices. Growth doesn't feel graceful when you're deep in it. It often feels clumsy, heavy, even hopeless. But that's where the real work is. That's where strength is made, the decision to move. Not when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. It's messy, it's uncertain, it's painfully slow. But here's the truth no one likes to admit. You don't do the work because it's fun. You do it because your future depends on it. You do it because the life you want, the version of yourself you know you're capable of becoming, is worth every hard step. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." And what happens when you do look inside, especially on the days when it feels like everything is falling apart? You find something raw, something real, a truth that cuts through the fog of discouragement and delay, that you're capable of more than your mind is telling you, that your current mood doesn't determine your next move, that you can act, yes, even without enthusiasm, even without motivation, even when everything in you wants to quit. Because discipline, it's not some rigid cage. It's not about forcing yourself into misery. It's freedom. The kind of freedom that only comes when you know, deep in your bones, that you are dependable, that you don't break promises to yourself, that your actions aren't dictated by how you feel today, but by what matters to you most tomorrow. Socrates once said, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." And that's exactly what daily discipline is. You're not at war with your past anymore. You're building a future, brick by brick, step by step. Even when it looks small, even when it looks like nothing's changing, you lay another brick, then another, and eventually, those small actions start to stack. They become your foundation. They form your structure. They rise into something steady, something strong, a life that doesn't crumble under pressure. Because it was built intentionally. It was built with you in mind. Not for applause, not for approval, but for endurance. And right after every hard fall, there's a moment. A crucial one. Let's talk about what you do in that moment, and why it might be the most powerful choice you ever make. There's a moment that comes after the fall. A moment where silence creeps in. But not the peaceful kind. Not the kind that brings rest or clarity. No. This silence feels like fog, thick, heavy, sitting on your chest like a weight you can't name. You try to breathe, but it lingers. You try to speak, but the words don't come. And in that stillness, pain starts to whisper. Softly at first, a faint echo in the background. But then it grows louder, until it's the only thing you can hear. Most people, they try to mute it. They pick up their phones. They scroll endlessly. They dive into work, or noise, or anything that might distract from that ache inside. Because to sit still and face pain directly, that takes a kind of courage most never practice. Not because they're weak, but because we were never taught how. But if you're serious about healing, not just surviving, not just moving on, but growing into something stronger, you can't keep running. You have to stop, breathe, and ask the question most people avoid. What is this pain trying to teach me? The Stoics didn't view pain as punishment. They saw it as preparation. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." And that wasn't poetic metaphor. It was instruction. They believed that pain wasn't something to run from. It was something to explore, to lean into, to examine closely. Because pain is never random. It's information. It's a signal. It's the body and soul's way of revealing the cracks in your foundation, of pointing to the places where your boundaries slipped, where your standards softened, or where your voice stayed silent for too long. So ask yourself the hard questions. Did you stay too long in something? Not because it was right, but because it was familiar. Did you silence your intuition just to keep things peaceful? Did you ignore the warning signs, hoping that maybe, if you waited long enough, they'd just disappear? These aren't accusations. They're invitations, opportunities to uncover the truth. A truth that no external voice can deliver to you. Because when you're brave enough to answer them, you don't walk away weaker. You walk away clearer, sharper, more awake than you've ever been. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And he was right. Growth doesn't come from comfort. Comfort keeps you stagnant. It whispers that you're fine, even when you're not. But pain demands reflection. It forces stillness. It grabs you by the shoulders and says, "Look. Look at what's broken." And what happens after you finally look? Not to dwell in it, not to let it define you, but to understand it, to clean it out like a wound. Carefully, deliberately, so you don't carry the infection into your future. Plato once said, "All learning has an emotional base." Pain is deeply emotional, but it's also a teacher, a messenger, a quiet, powerful form of learning, if you're willing to sit with it, not dramatize it, not spiral inside of it. Just sit still, present, curious, and ask yourself, what is this showing me about myself? Because underneath the sting, beneath the grief, the regret, the shame, there's almost always a mirror. And that mirror doesn't reflect the image you tried to present to the world. It reflects the truth, who you really are, and more importantly, who you could become. This isn't about loving the pain. It's not about glorifying suffering. It's about learning from it, using it, letting it carve out a deeper space in you, for something stronger, something better, because at the end of the day, it's not the fall that changes you, it's your decision to face the wreckage, with your eyes open, and rise anyway. And then comes the next wave. The strange pressure to get back to normal, to return to the person you were before everything collapsed. But stop, pause for a second. Why would you want to go back to being the version of you that couldn't survive the storm? That version didn't make it through. You did. Bent, maybe, bruised, absolutely, but still here, still breathing, still learning. And that matters more than you know, because everything you've seen, everything you've endured, every scar you carry with you, it taught you something. It taught you what you can endure, what you will never accept again, what actually matters when everything else is stripped away. The Stoics didn't view adversity as a minor nuisance to avoid. They saw it as the furnace, the very fire that forges character. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." It's not just a quote, it's a road map. So don't rush to erase the evidence of your pain. Don't hide the signs of the storm as if they don't belong, because the fire that scorched you also refined you. Use it. Use it to forge someone wiser, someone clearer, someone newer, because the version of you that emerges from this, that's the one who doesn't just survive. That's the one who builds. The key isn't to bounce back, it's to evolve forward. You weren't meant to return to who you were before the storm hit. That version of you didn't have this wisdom, this strength, this clarity. So let it go. Let go of the version of yourself that clung to perfection just to feel safe. Let go of the habits that led to burnout, the ones that drained your energy while pretending to keep things together. Let go of the relationships that blurred your boundaries, the ones that praised you when you were available for everyone, but absent for yourself. Let go of the thoughts that made you play small, that disguised fear as being realistic. Instead, start here, start asking, now that I've seen what I've seen, who do I want to become? Because after everything, you know more about yourself now than you ever did before. You know what you tolerate, what you truly need, where your real strength lies. That kind of knowledge, it's not just insight, it's leverage. Use it. Use it to raise the bar on how you show up. Use it to set new boundaries on what you allow into your space. Use it to shift your expectations of others. Yes, but especially of yourself. That old version of you, they had excuses. They repeated patterns without even noticing. They mistook fear for logic. But you're past that now. You've outgrown the skin you once thought you'd live in forever. You walk differently. You think deeper. You speak with more intention. You move with more clarity. And if you haven't started doing those things yet, now is the time. Plato once said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." And the greatest power you have right now is the ability to define who you become. After everything you've lost, don't wait for permission. Don't let the past define the path ahead. Don't live like the wound is still wide open when you've already started to heal. Say it out loud if you have to. The new version of me walks like this, talks like this, chooses like this. Then back it up with your habits, with your decisions, with the energy you allow into your life. Let the old identity fade away, not out of shame, but because you've simply outlived it. As Socrates taught, the soul should always be improving itself, not just reacting to the world but reshaping from the inside out. That's your task now, not to rebuild the version of you that once felt safe, but to lead yourself forward into strength, into clarity, into becoming someone who doesn't just survive the storm, but rises from within it. Not a return, a rise, not a repeat, a rebirth, because whether you noticed it or not, you became someone new in the fire. And that version of you, that's the one worth building on. But life, sometimes it doesn't just test you, it hits you with something so sharp, so unexpected, so heavy, that it tricks your brain into thinking, this must be the end. A rejection so painful, a failure so public, a betrayal so close, that your entire world feels smaller afterward. Your future feels like it shrinks. Your confidence fades like steam on a cold window. And worst of all, your identity begins to wrap itself tightly around that one moment. Like that failure, that heartbreak was all there ever was, as if everything before it suddenly vanished. But here's the truth, and you need to hear this clearly. That moment was not the ending. It was just a pause, a comma, not a period. And that difference, that changes everything. In Stoic thought, there is no such thing as a meaningless event. No detour is random. No pain is wasted. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength, which will always spring up, if thou wilt always look. Let that land, because no matter how far you feel you've fallen, no matter how final that moment felt, there is something inside you that circumstances cannot touch. Something deeper than the rejection, stronger than the collapse. Something untouched, still capable, still willing. You haven't lost your strength. That setback, it didn't steal your power, it just convinced you to stop using it. It whispered lies like, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I've gone too far to turn things around. Maybe this is just who I am now. But that voice, it's not truth. It's fear in disguise. Because your life, your story, it's not over. Not even close. You still have the pen in your hand. The ink hasn't run dry. And what you choose to write next, that next sentence, that next step, is what will define you. Not the stumble, not the silence, not the chapter where everything fell apart. What defines you is the moment you decide, I'm not done. The next word, the next decision, the next inch forward. On the days that feel unbearable, that's what separates those who stay stuck in the fall from those who rise into something stronger, something wiser, something undeniably better. Carl Jung once said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. That quote, it's not meant to sit on your Instagram feed. It's not a pretty frame for your wall. It's a wake-up call, a challenge. Because you get to choose. You always did. Yes. The pain may not have been your fault. But the healing, the rebuilding, the next chapter, that's yours to lead. You are not at the mercy of what broke you. You are the author of what happens from here. Aristotle believed, hope is a waking dream. But let's be clear, real hope, it's not passive, it's not soft, it's not wishful thinking wrapped in pretty words. Real hope is work. It's holding the pen steady, even when your hands are shaking. It's saying, yes, that happened. But also, here's what I'm going to do now. And then living that rewrite, one small decision, one imperfect action, one breath at a time. Because as Socrates reminded us, what matters most is not what the world throws at you, but what you choose to throw back. So maybe you fell, maybe you lost something, or someone, or even lost yourself for a while. But listen closely, you're still here. And that means the story isn't over. Setbacks are not tombstones, they're turning points. And what you do next becomes the most powerful part of your life. You don't need noise to come back. You don't need revenge. You don't even need them to notice. You just need one thing: to decide you're not staying where you fell. Rise quietly, move slowly, but move. Because this time, you're not rising to prove anything. You're rising to become everything you were meant to be. And that is the Stoic way.